Imagine waking up one morning to find your water cut off, only to discover you actually own the entire water supply. What would you do? Let us know where you're from in the comments. I'm curious to see how far this story reaches and what you would do in this situation. I sat down with my morning coffee when I noticed an envelope from the HOA in the mailbox. My heart sunk as I opened it. Dear resident, due to unpaid dues, your water supply will be cut off. Unpaid? I had always paid on time. Confused, I dialed the number on the letter and braced myself for an answer. Hello? This is Jim, I said. I received a notice about my water being cut off, but I've never missed a payment. The woman on the other end sounded robotic. I'm sorry, you'll have to sort it out in person. What a runaround. Determined to get to the bottom of this, I marched over to the HOA office. A still, sterile reception area greeted me, and I felt my frustration rise. I need to speak to someone about my water, I said sharply. The manager looked at me with disinterest. There's been a mistake, she admitted, glancing at a computer screen. Yet, she shrugged it off. You'll have to wait for the next billing cycle. My blood boiled. I wasn't waiting for anything. Look, I said, leaning closer. I'm not leaving here until this is resolved. Her indifferent expression told me she wasn't taking me seriously. But that wouldn't stop me. I glanced around and noticed a few other residents. Like me, they looked defeated but determined. I knew I needed allies to take on the HOA. After gathering the residents, we met at my house one evening. This is ridiculous, I exclaimed. They cut my water without any reason. We need to come together. As I shared my story, their brows furrowed with concern. I received a notice too, said one neighbor. Suddenly, we were sharing horror stories about the mysteriously rising fees and ignored maintenance requests. Feeling the power of unity, I proposed action. Let's confront the HOA at the next meeting, I suggested, excitement bubbling inside me. But not everyone was on board. What if they retaliate? Someone asked, fear evident in their eyes. They can't keep us quiet, I insisted, and slowly, faces shifted from doubt to determination. As the meeting approached, I dug through my old documents, hoping to find something that could support our fight. I stumbled upon paperwork that showed I owned a part of the water supply line. I blinked in disbelief. They can't just cut us off, I thought, invigorated by this newfound knowledge. But when I shared my findings with the group, the response was mixed. Would they believe me? Just then, the HOA notified us about a new rule claiming ownership of all community utilities. How could this be? My heart raced. This isn't just about my water anymore. It's about all of us, I urged. Faces turned serious, and a collective determination filled the room. I had to take action, and now I had support by my side. With the whistleblower's help, I hired a lawyer to investigate the HOA's shady practices. They've been playing dirty for years, he said as he perused their bylaws. I asked, so we have a chance to change this? He nodded with a glint in his eye. It was time to fight back, and I was ready. The day of the protest had arrived, and I felt a mixture of nerves and excitement. As we gathered outside the HOA office, I could see residents clutching signs demanding justice. Just as I was about to lead us in a chant, I noticed the HOA board members peering from behind the glass. They looked furious, and my heart raced. This is the start of our fight, I shouted, and voices joined mine. Suddenly, a woman shouted from the back, "They can't silence us anymore." The crowd erupted in agreement, a wave of energy surging through us. After the protest, the HOA retaliated with a threatening letter. "We're considering legal action against you for defamation," it blared. I felt a chill run through my spine. I hadn't expected them to come after me personally. My voice trembled as I addressed the community. They may try to intimidate us, but we won't back down. Determined to fight, I brought our lawyer into the fold. Together, we discussed how to prepare for this battle ahead and what the best way to counter their threats would be. Rallying support became my mission. I reached out to every resident I'd spoken with before, urging them to come to the next community meeting. "We need to tackle this head-on," I explained. Visions of changes danced in my mind. But when the meeting commenced, I felt the weight of nervousness settle over the room. The HOA board sat smugly at the front, expecting to intimidate us. "It's now or never, Jim," I whispered to myself. I stood and confronted the board, heart pounding. Nobody here should fear speaking out. My voice trembled but held strong. I reaffirmed our resolve. The board attempted to downplay our concerns, and a member sneered, "This is just a publicity stunt." Anger surged inside me, but I kept my cool. "These are real issues affecting all of us," I shot back. The tension in the room escalated. I could feel the eyes of my neighbors on me, hoping I wouldn't crack. The people began to rally behind me. "We deserve transparency," one shouted. Another chimed in, "No more cowardice." Each voice fueled my determination. The HOA's smug facade began to crack as the crowd's energy soared. Ultimately, I felt the tide starting to shift. Maybe we could actually make a difference. But just as we were rallying, I spotted a resident I hadn't spoken to, a whistleblower. I needed to persuade them to share what they knew. Gathering my courage, I approached the whistleblower after the meeting. "I know you want to help us," I said urgently. "Please, we need your voice." They hesitated but finally nodded. "I've seen things, like manipulation of the books." Hope surged through me. If we can expose them, this changes everything. But their fear was palpable. If they find out it was me. As we gathered evidence, the whistleblower became our lifeline. But the HOA learned about our digging and launched a smear campaign, calling me a troublemaker, trying to undermine my credibility. They claimed I was inciting division among residents. I felt weighed down by pressure, but I knew confronting them was necessary. I stood tall, saying, "If I'm a troublemaker for standing up for our rights, then so be it." I got my hands on damning financial documents revealing their misconduct. "This is it," I exclaimed, showing the papers to the residents. But doubt crept in. Was this enough? My heart raced with anxiety. "We need someone to testify," I told my lawyer, feeling the stakes rise. During the next community meeting, I laid out our evidence, but some residents still had doubts. "Is this even legal?" a voice called out. We could end up in deeper trouble. But as the discussions progressed, more residents were convinced. "Let's do this together," I declared, a wave of determination spreading through the room. The momentum built, and I smiled seeing the renewed energy. The day of the court hearing arrived, and I could hardly contain my nerves. As we entered the courtroom, I could see the opposing counsel smirking at our small army of supporters. "We've come too far to back down now," I told myself. As our side presented our evidence, I noticed the raised brows of the judge. Could this be our moment? But the HOA's lawyer came out swinging, dismissing our claims as baseless. "This is merely an overreaction fueled by a disgruntled resident," he argued. I felt my heart sink, but the crowd behind me surged with energy. "This is our fight," someone yelled, reminding me we weren't alone. My resolve reignited. We'd come this far, and I wasn't going to let them dismiss us without a fight. The tension in the air was palpable as we prepared for our next steps. My phone buzzed with messages from the community, all rallying around our cause. "We have to go bigger," I thought. I reached out to local politicians, sharing our plight and the evidence we'd gathered against the HOA. Their responses varied, but I pressed on. One local council member finally agreed to take a meeting with me. "You need to bring the community," she said firmly. "They need to see how seriously you take this." I relayed the news in our next gathering, hope blooming in our hearts. The day of the city council meeting arrived, and I felt the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. As I looked around at the sea of neighbors joining my mission, I felt a surge of courage. Each resident carried signs, their expressions determined. "Together we can make a difference," I reminded them before we entered the building. But once inside, I felt outnumbered by the HOA's high-powered lawyers. When it was time to speak, I took a deep breath and addressed the council directly, laying bare our struggle while battling against the HOA's glare. After my speech, the council members appeared divided. "We'll need to review the evidence," one said, and I felt a mix of hope and anxiety. The HOA, however, didn't lie down easily. They launched a counter-strategy, making wild claims about my credibility. How can they do this? I thought, my heart racing. I knew I had to prepare for the worst. With my lawyer's guidance, we rallied our supporters to write letters, contact representatives, and share their stories, amplifying our voices in a unified front. Weeks dragged on, and just as we began to feel progress, I received an unexpected call. "You need to know, the HOA is planning to fight back with public relations campaigns," the whistleblower warned. My heart sank at the thought of their dirty tactics. "They'll try to turn the community against us," I realized, but I refused to let fear take control. I scheduled a community meeting, eager to share the whistleblower's information and gear everyone up for the fight ahead. At the meeting, I listened to residents share their own stories of intimidation from the HOA. "They threatened me if I spoke up," a neighbor admitted, voice trembling. I felt a surge of anger. "This ends now," I declared, urging everyone to voice their truths. We dished out action plans, social media campaigns, community testimonials, and direct communication with the press. The residents lit up with enthusiasm. Their fear transformed into determination as they rallied together, forming a united front against the HOA. As part of our strategy, we began gathering testimonies from other local residents who had been victimized by their own HOAs. When we launched our campaign, the feedback was astounding. Social media was buzzing with common stories of abuse. But just as we began to gain traction, the HOA unleashed a heavy backlash, enveloping us in a wave of misinformation. They accused our community of fabricating stories. I felt the stress weigh down on me, and just as I was about to lose hope, I remembered my purpose, the truth. The day of the city council meeting approached, and I needed to amplify our message. I gathered our stories into a compelling presentation, weaving the heart of our cause into each slide. As I practiced the presentation in front of the community, I saw their expressions shift from anxious to resolute. "This is our moment," I said, standing taller. "We've come too far to turn back now." We felt empowered and ready to make our voices heard. Finally, the city council meeting arrived, and I was charged with energy. The room was packed with supporters, and as I stood before the council, I could feel their anticipation. "We are not here to be silenced," I stated firmly. I presented our evidence and testimonies with passion, and I could see some council members nodding in agreement. But then the HOA's attorney stood up, delivering a smug rebuttal, attempting to discredit our claims. Not again. I clutched the podium and unleashed my frustration. "This community is stronger than any lawyer." As I finished, the atmosphere crackled with tension. The council members conferred silently. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, anticipation mixed with anxiety. Would they listen to our fight? Just then, a council member turned towards me. "We want proof of these claims before taking any action," they said, leaving my hopes hanging in the balance. I wanted to scream. Did we come all this way for nothing? I thought, but I reminded myself that this was just another obstacle in our journey. Days passed and I felt the anxiety building. Would they take us seriously? The constant barrage of negative press reported by the HOA weighed heavily on me, but we remained committed. My phone buzzed one afternoon with an unexpected message. "We're on board with your fight," it read. It was from a local activist group ready to support our cause. "This is it," I exclaimed to my wife, who was just as elated. Their backing would amplify our efforts and give us fresh energy to face the HOA's tactics together. In what felt like a whirlwind, we organized a joint press conference. "This is the perfect opportunity to bring our community's voice to the forefront," I told the crowd gathered outside the city hall, brimming with excitement. As we stood united, I saw familiar faces beside me, all ready to fight for our rights. I stepped up to the podium, ready to share our story and rally the community. The media was there, and I made sure our message would reach all ears, refusing to back down any longer. The day of the vote at the city council was finally here. It wore heavy on my mind. Would they finally acknowledge our fight? As I stood, nervous but optimistic, I leaned on the support of the activist group right beside me. When the council members called for a vote, my heart raced. Each yes felt like a victory. As the results were announced, a cheer erupted in the room, and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Our community had won a significant battle that day, and I knew we would keep fighting for our rights. So, as we celebrate this victory today, remember, when we stand united and fight for our rights, change is not just possible, it's inevitable. What would you do if your community faced a similar challenge? Share your stories in the comments, and together, let's inspire others to take a stand.